Hello everybody, this is another Hot Wheels Collector video. Today we're looking at the 69 Ford Mustang Boss 302. This casting first debuted in 2012, however since then it's had a few retools. And this car which we are looking at today uses the 2020 casting, which is the latest retool of this car. I would like to mention that this car with the FALKEN livery, which we are looking at today, does feature in the 2023 Q case. I would also like to mention this car does feature in the 2023 Hot Wheels Then and Now mini-series, and is car number 10 out of 10. Now, as with all cars in the Then and Now mini-series, it is paired with another car. And the car that this is being paired up with is the '07 Ford Mustang, which has also been done in the FALKEN tyres livery, as you would expect, since this car does feature in the Then and Now series. And I would also like to mention that this car is number 244 out of 250 for 2023. But anyways, let me tell you where I actually found this car then. So I found this car in a local Aldi store at the price of £1.69. That's sort of the standard price here in the UK for Hot Wheels mainlines. But anyways, I heard in a Facebook group that Aldi stores were going to be restocking Q cases. Now, it's not very often that Aldi stores do get Hot Wheels in, as they classify these as a special buy item, and essentially that means once they're gone, they're gone. They usually don't get them in for another year. So yeah, I was really excited that they were going to be getting new Hot Wheels in, so I quickly went to my local store on a Saturday, and I was super disappointed that there were no new Hot Wheels or any Hot Wheels at all in that store. But then, after I'd been to the store, I was looking through the comments under that post, and people were saying that all the stores were supposed to get a memo to put the boxes out on Monday morning, but some of the shops hadn't got that message and hence had put them out too early. So I went back on that Monday morning, and yes, there were 5 whole boxes of completely untouched Q case. I got all the recolours I wanted, all the new castings, and I also got 2 treasure hunts. But unfortunately there was no super treasure hunt, but that's something that I do come to expect, as they are super rare here in the UK. And honestly, I don't collect Hot Wheels for the valuable stuff. I collect the stuff I like, and I highly recommend that that is what you do as well. Don't get too hung up on the rare and valuable stuff. But anyways, let me give you some facts about the real life car. So in real life, this car has a naturally aspirated V8 engine, which is 4.9 litres in displacement. This engine produced 290 horsepower, which is exactly the same as the Chevy Camaro Z28. And this engine also produced 290 pound-feet of torque, converted to 393 Nm of torque. This car also had a 0 to 60 time in 6.5 seconds, and also had a top speed of 157 miles per hour, which converts to 253 kilometers per hour. The Ford Mustang Boss 302 was produced for only 2 years, and that was between the year 1969 and the year 1970. This car was also rear-wheel drive and had a 4-speed manual transmission. 1,628 of the Boss 302 Mustangs were made in 1969, and an additional 7,014 Boss 302 Mustangs were created in 1970. And this car, when it was new, was valued at about $3,450 in 1969, and when you take inflation into consideration, that converts to $28,992, or £23,200. And the final fact I do have here for you is the 1969 Boss 302 Mustang now has an average market value of about $135,000, or £108,100. It's safe to say that if you bought this car new in 1969, you made a very wise investment, and if you were to sell this car, you would make a lot of profit. But anyways, that is it for the facts about this thing, so now let's move on to my showcase of the Hot Wheels model. Alright, so kicking off this showcase then, we'll first of all take a look at the side of this car, and I'll first of all mention the wheel choice on this thing. So this car is rolling on the 5-spoke muscle wheels, which first debuted in 2010, and on this car they've been painted in chrome. Next up, for the colour of the rest of the car then, it's all been painted in this standard blue colour. The reason why I do describe it as standard is because it's not super dark and it's not super light, it's just kind of in the middle. This blue is the iconic blue which does feature on cars with the FALKEN tyres livery. Next up, for the tempo work on the side of this thing then, it's pretty plentiful to be honest, so let's get straight into it. First of all, we do have the FALKEN tyres sponsor featuring here. That's no surprise since this car does have the FALKEN tyres livery, and if you don't know what FALKEN tyres make, it's pretty much in the name, they make tyres. I will mention this FALKEN tyres sponsor has been done pretty much all in white with a little bit of red in there, and this is accurate to the real life FALKEN tyres logo. Next up, we do have the TN sponsor featuring here, tampoed in white as well. If you don't know what they produce lowering springs and coilovers. We also do have the K&N sponsor featuring just below the TN sponsor in white tampo as well. If you don't know what they produce, they mainly manufacture air filters for cars. And just below this we do have the Sparko sponsor being tampoed on here in white once again, and they produce racing safety equipment. And just below that we do have the Hot Wheels logo featuring here being tampoed in white. Next up, I'll mention that the iconic Falcon striping does feature here tampoed in green. It is tampo work, it's not paint. I would also like to mention that pretty much the entirety of the front fender of this car has been done in this same green. The only portion of this car which does not receive this green tampo on the front fender is the wheel arch. And the final thing which I do want to mention in terms of tampo work is the Ford logo does feature here being tampoed in a mixture of white and blue, as you would expect. This blue is pretty dark. Next up, onto the metal casting and plastic usage then. First of all, I will mention that this car does have door handles featuring moulded into the metal casting in the form of a protrusion from the rest of the body of the car. I would also like to mention that this car's side windows are wound down. I would also like to quickly mention that this car does not have any wing mirrors. This is really unfortunate, as it does make this car look a little bit less complete in my opinion, and these not being here will affect my score at the end of this video in a negative way. Unfortunately, it is a real shame. And now onto the plastic usage then. I will mention that the rear bumper and front bumper have been created through that chrome painted base plastic, and they do continue around to the side of the car, which is accurate to the real life Ford Mustang Boss 302. Hopefully you can see that this car is left-hand drive, and also this car only has one seat inside. This gives this car a lot more of a race car or drift car look, and in this case with the Falken tyres livery, it is going for a more drift car look. But anyways, that is it for the side of this thing, so now let's move straight onto the front of this car. Alright, so taking a look at the front of this car then, even though there's no tamper work detailing here, there's still plenty of detail in the form of plastic usage. I will mention that the entirety of the front of this car has been created through that chrome painted base plastic, and in this plastic we do actually have the headlights moulded, as well as the high beams of this car being moulded here as well, and we also do have the main front grille of this car also featuring here. Now interestingly, the real life Boss 302's grille does actually have rectangular shaped slits in the grille, where this Hot Wheels model has circular shaped engravements. I'm not sure why there is such an inconsistency there, but there is one there unfortunately. I know that might bug some people, but yeah, it is one of those things. Next up, I'll mention that the bumper trim of this car does feature here as well in the plastic. This is accurate to the real life car, but on most of the real life cars, that is actually the only piece of the front which is done in chrome. The rest would usually be done in black or some other colour. And finally, I would like to mention that the front splitter of this car is also created through that same base plastic. I would also like to mention that you could easily add any details you want to the front of this car using Sharpie or acrylic paint. A few notable details which you may want to add to your car is the headlights, as well as changing the front grille colour of this car to black, but that's totally up to you. But anyways, that is it for the front of this thing, so now let's move on to the next side of this car. Alright, so taking a look at the next side of this car then, it is the exact same as the previous side, so I'm not going to bore you with going over everything all over again. You can pause the video here for yourself if you're looking for something specific. If not, let's move straight onto the rear of this car. Alright, so taking a look at the rear of this car then, there's still plenty of detail here, even though there's no tamper work, so let's get straight into it. First of all, I would like to mention that the spoiler of this car does feature here moulded into the metal casting. This is not really that accurate, as on the real life car the spoiler was done in black, whereas on this car the spoiler is the same colour as the rest of the body of the car. But this is something to be expected though, because this is a mainline and this car has lots of tamper work in other places, so we do have to take what we've been given for the price point that this car is at. And the majority of the rest of the rear of this car is created through that chrome painted base plastic. I would like to mention that the rear lights of this car do feature in this plastic, as well as the Ford Mustang badge location also featuring here in the form of a protrusion. Now if you don't know, on the real life car, this Mustang badge also acts as a fuel filler cap. That's pretty cool indeed. And just above this Ford Mustang badge, I'm not sure if you can see, it's a really small detail, but the trunk release button does feature there. And the final few details then, first of all we do have the reverse lights of this car featuring moulded into this plastic, and we also do have the license plate holder portion of this car also featuring here. You could easily add your own details to the rear lights of this car, as well as the Ford Mustang badge using something like Sharpie or acrylic paint. And as for that license plate holder, you could easily add your own license plate to this car using something like a permanent sticker. But anyways, that is it for the rear of this car, so now let's move straight onto the top of this thing. Next up, onto the top of this car then, the detail does not stop yet. First of all, you can see the spoiler of this car featuring in the metal casting from a top view. There's really no additional details that you can see from this angle though. Next up, I will mention that we do have these racing modifications to the rear window of this car. Most of the Boss 302s did actually have louvers on the rear window, but this one does not. Instead, it has this racing modification. I'm not entirely sure what this is meant to represent, but somebody can probably let us know in the comments below. This protrusion, which does start off in the window plastic, does actually continue into the metal casting as well. Next up, we do have the continuation of the Falken striping to the roof of this car in green. I would also like to mention that the interior plastic of this car has been done in black. Next up, I will mention that this car does not have any windshield wipers, unfortunately. This is a real shame, as it does make this car a little bit less complete in my opinion, and hence will affect my score in a negative way at the end of this video. Next up, onto the hood of this car then, I will mention that the entirety of the hood of this thing has been done in this Falken tyres green. I would also like to mention that we do have some vents featuring near the windshield of this car in the metal casting here. These are simply just an indentation, they are not a shut off or hole in the metal casting. A few more details then. First of all, we do have some hood pins featuring in the metal casting here. They do feature here in the form of a protrusion from the rest of the body of the car. And finally, we do have this bulge in the hood, which is accurate to the real life car. This bulge does actually have a blue outline to it, and hence is highlighted on this car. The reason why it does have a blue outline is simply because the tampo machine did not reach those areas. But yeah, it does actually look pretty cool with that outline nonetheless. The Falken Tyres logo also does feature on the hood of this car, returning from the side of this thing in white and red. Anyways, that is it for the top of this thing. And that is also it for my showcase of this car. So now let's move on to my final thoughts and review on this thing. Alright, so now it is time for my final thoughts and review on this car. I'm a big fan of this thing in real life. It's just a really nice one, and I'm happy to see this car featuring in the Hot Wheels lineup. There are a few things which I'm not super happy about with this casting. First of all, it doesn't have any wing mirrors, and secondly, it doesn't have any windshield wipers. Unfortunately, those details not being here do make this car a little bit less complete in my opinion, and that will affect my score at the end of this video in a negative way, unfortunately, because I do love this car. But for this specific release, I love the wheels on this thing. They look fantastic. Again, I don't really think there would have been any better wheel choice for this car. I also love the Falken Tyres livery on this thing. I just think it suits this car great. And the final thing which I want to praise is the plastic usage. I love the fact that the rear and front bumper portion of this car has been created through the base plastic, and on this car it has been painted in chrome, making this car look even more special and cool looking. But anyways, that does lead me onto my score out of 10 for this thing. So what am I going to give this car out of 10? It is going to be receiving a totally deserved 9 out of 10. Like I say, if those wing mirrors were there and those windshield wipers were there, this car would have got a 10 out of 10. You definitely get your money's worth with this car. There's plenty of tampo work on it, and it definitely does look phenomenal. This is a great addition to any collector's collection, but particularly those who like Falken Tyres cars, and also people who like muscle cars. And drift cars, to be honest, because the Falken Tyres livery is associated with drift cars. But anyways, that is it for this video, so if you guys did enjoy, make sure to like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Remember, you can also press that notification bell so you do not miss new uploads. Remember, you can also share this video with any friends, family, or any groups who may be interested. But remember, don't feel pressure to if you don't feel like you have anybody who may be interested. You watching this video all the way to the end means so much to me, and I really do thank you for making it all the way up until this point. But anyways, that is it for this video, so I hope you guys did enjoy, and I really do hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye everyone.